celebrate a new book titled Climate Chaos, How Violence Drives It and the Best Bet for Change. An evening to talk and discuss its core concerns. An evening to congratulate a close friend, Hasan Abdullah, who is the author of this book, of this thought-provoking book. Many of you present here might remember a similar gathering held around 9 years back, 2017, where we had welcomed Hasan Abdullah's first book on Ghalib, titled The Evolution of Ghalib, that was at the IIT main building. This evening, we have with us a very distinguished panel to talk and discuss the book. We are extremely thankful to Dr. Arun Mitra, Mr. Gohar Raza, and Mr. Jacob Kushi for sparing their valuable time and agreeing to discuss the book. I request all of them join us on stage. I also request my friend Hasan Abdullah to join us. Please. Thank you. So, Dr. Arun Mitra, an ENT surgeon by profession, has been passionately working for peace ever since his student days. At present, he is president of IPDP, Indian Doctors for Peace and Development, and is a former co-president of International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War. He was part of the team of those who had gone to receive the Nobel Peace Prize for International Physicians for Prevention of Nuclear War. For many of us present here, Gohar does not need any introduction. He is a scientist, a shire, a science communicator, documentary filmmaker, all rolled into one. His recent book in Hindi, Mythikon Se Vigyan Tak, has become a bestseller. Just now was telling me that it has sold 40,000 copies. Wow. It has been translated in English, and Gohar's 3 collections of resistance poetry is also available. Jacob Kushi, our third panelist, is deputy science editor with the Hindu, one of India's oldest and most respected newspapers. He writes on matters related to technology, the environment, research, and especially the challenges doing science in India. Prior to that, he was a science writer with Mint, The Week, The Huffington Post, and has written for Newsweek and New Economic Times. He has degrees in electrical engineering, journalism, and contemporary India studies. As you all know, Hasan has been a professional rock engineer for over 3 decades. He has also written on philosophy, science, society, and literature in both English and Urdu. His earlier book on Ghalib, which traced the poet's intellectual journey through interpretations of selected ghazals couplets, had received appreciation and gone into second print. We are sure his latest book would be no exception. On behalf of all of us, I would expect that we will have more sort of occasions of Hasan's books, new books. I now request all the panelists to release the book. Please. When the book came out, I put forward few questions regarding the book to Hasan to know what prompted him to write this book, what are his key arguments, what he thinks could be short-term solutions, why does he place so much emphasis on the US armament industry and nuclear arms race, and to throw light on the contributions of the left, starting with Karl Marx's formulation of metabolic rift and its subsequent development by others, so as to dispel the misconception of those who accuse the left of being blind towards the issue of ecology and environmental degradation, and call leftists, within quote, productivists. Whereas in reality only the left has dealt with this issue holistically and at the most fundamental level. All that conversation is available on the web magazine Mainstream. Now it's time to listen to Hasan Abdullah himself about what he thinks about the book. Please welcome. When the book came out, I put forward few questions regarding the book to Hasan to know what prompted him to write this book, what are his key arguments, what he thinks could be short-term solutions, why does he place so much emphasis on the US armament industry and nuclear arms race, and to throw light on the contributions of the left, starting with Karl Marx's formulation of metabolic rift and its subsequent development by others, so as to dispel the misconception of those who accuse the left of being blind towards the issue of ecology and environmental degradation, and call leftists, within quote, productivists. Whereas in reality only the left has dealt with this issue holistically and at the most fundamental level. All that conversation is available on the web magazine Mainstream. Now it's time to listen to Hasan Abdullah himself about what he thinks about the book. Please welcome.
Respected Dr. Ravinindra, Mr. Gauri Azhar, Mr. Jacob Koshi, and Mr. Subhash Gitade, and respected invitees, let me take you through the journey of this book. Commentary will be offered by distinguished panelists. What prompted me? The pandemic prompted me to study not only COVID-19, but also the Spanish influenza of 1918-19. That inquiry led me further to China's 4+ campaign, to Britain's large-scale importation of bones and guano during its second agricultural revolution, and from there to the present, to the sixth mass species extinction, to Arctic warming, to the thawing of permafrost. Each of these reinforced a growing conviction that these phenomena are not accidents. What are they? They are nature's rebuke, her response to human overreach, to resource overconsumption, and to reckless interference in systems far more complex than we acknowledge. The next question then is, how do we understand this crisis? Two concepts offer a unifying lens: energy and entropy. Energy sustains life on Earth. Entropy, a measure of disorder, signals the degradation of systems and ultimately the end of life. From this perspective, every human activity must be evaluated on four counts. What are they? The purpose it serves, the resources it consumes, the entropy it generates, and the degree to which it disturbs ecological balance. The questions then are simple, but their implications are not. How healthy is our mode of existence, and how long can it be sustained? Preserving life requires minimizing waste, optimizing the use of finite resources, and approaching all interventions in nature with caution and humility. So another question arises. We must ask, which human activity yields no real social benefit, yet consumes vast resources? The answer is clear. Violence, and above all, war. I don't think anybody will have any doubt. Violence is not an aberration. It is structural. It is both a product and a driver of concentrated power. Wars sustain unjust systems. The arms industry, nuclear proliferation, and mechanisms of internal repression do not merely squander immense resources. They generate the conditions for further conflict. And war does something else as well. It diverts our attention from life's essential questions: life's purpose, its interconnectedness, and the pursuit of meaningful well-being. Then, what sustains this violence? Knowledge systems that manufacture ignorance and the institutions that preserve them. Education, as structured today, often conditions rather than empowers. That is a problem. It enhances productivity but also maintains the status quo and suppresses critical thinking. In this sense, it systematically manufactures ignorance. At the root of this lies what I call the philosophy of othering, a divisive framework that fragments human consciousness. Such division serves the interests of capital and power. Knowledge production becomes biased and selective. The public sphere is saturated with propaganda. The result is a society in which inquiry is curtailed and human beings are reduced to instruments of capital accumulation. Our institutions, national and international alike, do not merely reflect these priorities, they actively shape and sustain them. Media, policy-making bodies, corporations, and even academic institutions, all these serve to insulate dominant structures from meaningful challenge. To understand climate chaos, we must grasp this triad. What? Ideology, institutions, and praxis, the architecture of the crisis. This is not a failure of knowledge. There is abundance of knowledge. It's a systemic condition. And that is also evident from the fact that despite decades of warnings from scientists and thinkers, our movement toward existential decline continues to accelerate, driven largely by climate chaos. The repeated inaction of those in power, year after year, even at the conferences of the parties, only underscores this reality. Before turning, thank you so much. Before turning to the United States specifically, let me recall two historical episodes that illustrate how power has been used to reinforce systemic inequity. In 1957, so long ago, the CIA covertly supported the Vimochana Samaram in Kerala. That was following the introduction of progressive reforms, that is land redistribution and educational restructuring, by the communist government led by E.M.S. Namboodiripad. This intervention culminated in the imposition of president's rule and the dismissal of a democratically elected government. Decades later, retired NATO Supreme Allied Commander General Wesley Clark revealed that just weeks after 9/11, I think we all remember 9/11, he had been shown a memo from the US Department of Defense. It reportedly outlined plans to attack and destroy the governments of 7 countries in 5 years, beginning with Iraq and extending to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and the current one, Iran. Such interventions became possible because since the Second World War, the United States has been the dominant global power, economically, militarily, and institutionally. By the late 1940s, it accounted for nearly half of global industrial production and held an early monopoly over nuclear weapons, while declining to halt their further proliferation. With the disintegration of the USSR in 1991, this dominance became even more pronounced. This concentration of power enabled the United States to divert vast resources toward militarism, entrenched in security worldwide, and normalize an arms-driven model of wasteful capitalism, embedding the military-industrial complex across much of the world. So this is my understanding. Now, this analysis points toward a path forward in 2 steps. First, the articulation and dissemination of a philosophy of policing, a vision of harmonious coexistence across species as an antidote to the philosophy of othering. Second, the development of an emancipatory movement grounded in this philosophy, one capable of transforming human consciousness and advancing a concrete, actionable program. The moment we inhabit is grave. There is no softening that. What we need is courage. Courage to rethink, courage to resist, courage to coexist.
Now it's time to listen to our panelists, their opinion and their critique of the book. And I invite, first of all, Mr. Jacob Kushi to share it. Jacob Kushi, please.
Thank you, everyone. I would first like to recount how I met Dr. Abdullah when he was at the CSM-CRI. I think that's the correct acronym, right? Okay. When we met first. No, it's an important point because this was around the time when he was a scientist over there, and I'm a journalist who's always looking for stories and asking him about this and that. But this was also the time when the Ministry of Water Resources had this very, they, among the many things that they were doing, one of the things that they were investigating was the origins of the Saraswati river. And this was all the heydays of the first installment of this, of the NDA government. So this was, of course, the intent of that particular investigation that time was purely in, in glorifying the myth of India and, proving that this particular, the existence of this river validated, our ancient texts. But what had struck me then was the fact that, they had completely ignored the climate aspect of what had led to the slow drying of the Indus and Saraswati River in the first place. And here was this river that symbolized how over time civilizations can completely move across geographies, across continents, purely and completely alter, ways of living and ways of life. So it is in this context that when we talk about climate chaos, or of course, as Dr. Abdullah has very eloquently articulated in his book, that we normalize it in with the term climate change, as if it is a purely natural and geological, atmospheric geological formula. But actually, this is something that is triggered almost entirely by human intervention into climate systems. It comes from our arrogance that the human mind is, of course, with all its creativity and all its powers of reasoning and ability to, harness the laws that govern nature, can be so bold itself as to control it and, and mutate it in ways that the human mind, that human beings think will always be for their, for their benefit. But one of the points that I would like to dwell upon a little bit is the idea of science and reason itself. Yes, in this book, we are, we discuss quite extensively how powerful countries, particularly the United States, has a overwhelming dominance over technology and consequently capital. But where does this technological dominance have its origins? Technology has always been, a part of human nature. I mean, to accommodate, it has been in two ways. I mean, human beings accommodate themselves to nature, or human beings try to control nature. Controlling nature is what technology is all about. But it is since, I mean, if to put it in a very European context, it is since the Enlightenment, or since the 17th or 18th century, that we came upon these ideas of reason, as if that there were European scientists who basically argued and articulated that there are laws that govern the functioning of the universe, and if only we just understood these laws, whether it was written in the language of mathematics and whether it could be reproduced inside labs through artificial experiments, we would be able to dictate the course or course of nature in ways that can benefit us. Very positive, very enlightening. But let us look at also what has happened after that. When this logic of science and reason has been applied in a way. It has been applied in ways that is liberating to people. It has been applied in ways that sets them free. But when it is being captured by power, when it is being captured by vested interests, the same science that promotes reason can also be perverted in ways that were unimaginable even to the so-called savage pre-scientific ancestors of ours. I mean, let us look at, for example, anybody who studied botany, in some way or other, Carl Linnaeus. I mean, we commemorate him whenever we are studying plants and their classification, and we use the two-named, nominal system to identify every species on Earth. It is also not, it is kind of buried in the footnotes of scientific history that Carl Linnaeus was also the first person who, in his enthusiasm to classify plants, animals, also classified races of people. He was the first person who scientifically came up with this perverted logic that the Europeans or the whites are the dominant superior races, whereas black African people are inferior. And he even went so bold as to claim that these were actually not yet anywhere near the levels of human. Come down to a few more decades after that. We all know Darwin, but what about his nephew, Francis Galton? I mean, he was he was one of the brightest stars of the European intellectual tradition. But Francis Galton, who is now revered as the father of biostatistics, the person who understands and analyzes, all the statistics-based understandings that we have incorporated into us. He was the person who actually initiated the use of statistics to study racial differences. This was not any innocent, pure investigation. He was the person who used the most ultra-scientific methods of his time, using those craniometers and, basically which are those instruments that are used to measure the diameter of skulls. And in complete contrivance or contradiction of the original scientific spirit, where you do measurements to find out something new, he was a person who wanted to use science to confirm his own biases. So he made all these measurements and he invented several branches of statistics to basically argue, again, the same thing as Linnaeus has argued, which is that, the European race is more evolved, is more refined, and is more developed, and therefore, all of this, of course, was in the larger project of imperialism, basically giving to come up with a scientific basis to justify rule, or how to dominate, how one species, one set of people can dominate over the others. And fair to say, this is all absolute, all of these science and these research papers were the foundational philosophies of these fields. Of course, there has been this attitude since that, hey, these are people, let us leave out whatever, let us not throw out the babies with the bathwater, so to say. Let us extract the science out of, and keep aside their racial proclivities, which is, I guess, a tenable argument. But I would argue that it is this thinking that still pervades much of what we do in the name of scientific improvement and scientific, applying technology to what some people would say improving the lives and livelihoods of people. Looking at the climate debate is a sterling example of this. I have covered a couple of COP conferences in various countries, where the essential practice is that all of these countries come and we have about 10 days of deliberations and ministerial meetings where one set of countries is trying to influence, cajole the other set of countries into accepting emission cuts and all of those things, and how some countries resist it. Now, what is the mode of resistance, let's say, a country like India does? It is an unalloyed fact that India is the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases. Ultimately, as far as nature is concerned, it is only the net amount of carbon that really matters. If, of course, you believe or you accept that the remaining science is true, that is, an accumulation of carbon dioxide is what drives greenhouse gas-based heating. But as far as a government is concerned, we have somehow taken the argument of equity and justice, because as several of you who follow the debates would probably know, that India's argument is that yes, we are a developing country, and we must have the right to to use the same amount of fossil fuels that made other countries develop. But because of our population, we are very low on per capita terms, which is which is an argument which we cannot really debate against, because it comes under the logic of justice, fairness, and equity. So India actually articulates that it is fair and just on its part, using this concept of just dividing the number of the quantity of carbon dioxide by its population, which logically would is very large. So the idea is that we use techniques of science, techniques of statistics to make arguments that ultimately clash against what science itself says regarding concepts like the greenhouse gas and how our environmental future itself is at peril. So, in closing, I would just like to end by saying that the idea of science as a liberating force is not true in its entirety. Somehow it is. I guess this would be a discussion we could take in a different forum. I've always been curious about the fact that is violence something that is inherent to to human nature. I mean, people have studied the evolutionary societies such as chimpanzees and bonobos, our closest primate ancestors, and ethologists have come out with very surprising findings about ape behaviors and the tendency of violence that even characterizes some of our closest primates. So I've always been curious, is this something that is inherent somehow to our species, that we formulate divisions and we try to create groups and we try to create us versus them situations, and in closing, even science per se is considered science when we are taught to, if you want to observe the results of a particular force or if you want to observe cause and effect, you have to separate the rest of the world from that particular experiment that you are having. And that is what a valid experiment usually is, and is which gets reported in journals. So the idea of separation, the idea of parting things apart, is also a kind of violence. I would argue in a way, and I think it is a matter that we should dwell upon more seriously and ask whether these forces and these pulls and pressures are so inherent to us that they in some way define what it is to be human. Thank you.
Now I invite Governor.
about 200 years ago, Mir commented that ये सांस भी आहिस्ता के नाजुक है बहुत काम आफाक की इसकार गए शीशा गई का. And I think this has been repeatedly established by the book that Hasan Saab has written. But he doesn't stop here. He doesn't only say that the entire cosmos is interconnected and it is fragile, but he paints a much larger canvas. And on this canvas, the interconnections of various organizations, how American imperialism has behaved, and how the humanity itself has trampled upon the fragile model that the cosmos has presented to us and given to us, or gifted to us. And he comes back to India also repeatedly. So see a movement to farmers' movement to the imperial conspiracy against humanity. All these interconnectedness have been presented in the book. And I was very happy that all this material was and data he very meticulously collected and placed them in Marxist-Leninist framework. You are absolutely right that we are accused of ignoring certain issues which others have raised. But no, all the data probably on any issue can be placed in Marxist-Leninist framework, and then we can probably understand more fully the interconnectedness. Because the conspiracy by the imperialist has always been that disconnect things, present them in a confused state, and therefore confuse the masses all over the world. But this data anybody could have connected. What attracted me to the book was the part how violence drives it. So climate chaos, obviously it's a very attractive title, but how violence drives it is the most important part of it, in my opinion. And therefore I thank you that you wrote the book. I read it with a lot of interest, and it addresses my long-term complaint that most of the groups across the world have tried to hide the interconnectedness between the violence of any kind with the climate chaos. This has been a major conspiracy in my opinion. And the reason probably, when I try to understand, that out of about 24 major conferences that have happened after 1974, only 6 of them mention war somewhere. And how do they mention it? They mention it by saying that the impact of war on climate should be minimized, which means war as an instrument of resolving conflicts is acceptable. Therefore, the problem is that war itself is not rejected by the imperialist forces. And once you don't reject war as an instrument or a way of resolving conflicts, then things will continue as they are. But why? Why is this conspiracy against the public or the human beings or human race? In my opinion, when we will rise together, humanity will rise together and say no war. No war, and any war is not just war. We will not accept any war on planet. I think that the biggest, as per book also, and we know, the biggest culprit is US imperialism, which controls about 43% to 50% somewhere the market. And therefore, they keep on driving wars. And this is the only country which has never ever after Second World War has stopped fighting wars in one or the other part of the globe. Not one day. In about 200 odd years of history of United States, there are only 16 years when it has not been fighting. Right? So after Second World War, there is no other example of any country anywhere which has continuously fought wars, one after the other, right from Korean War to Vietnam War to, you name anybody and they are there. They have 800 military bases in 80 countries. In such a situation, this book should be read, distributed, especially those who are working in the area of environment and climate chaos, as you call it. They must read this book, and I think it should be translated into other languages as well. Thank you.
Dr. Arun Mitra.
देखिए दूसरी बार अभी तो चल रहा है
It was really interesting to read the word climate chaos. We started with the word climate change, then the climate crisis, and now we have reached the stage of climate chaos. Probably the chaos indicates that there is no point of return now unless we take serious steps, as has been highlighted by the previous two panelists. And the danger I apprehend now, after this war, is that many experts in their discussions, now they are saying that if Iran had a nuclear weapon, America and Israel would have not attacked. That means Iran should produce the nuclear weapons. Others should produce the nuclear weapons. It's a very dangerous outcome that is being propagated by the nuclear lobby, in my opinion. It's very dangerous. Our organization has studied the health impacts of the nuclear war, along with some environmental groups, Lily Shia and others from the University, Rutgers University in the US, and Ira Alfand, one of our co-presidents of our IPNW. They have made several publications on that. And a hypothetical study, of course, a scientific study which cannot be refuted. They concluded that if a limited nuclear war occurs regional level between India and Pakistan, what will happen? 2 billion people would end up with starvation. And how they explain? Because the nuclear weapons, when it will explode, it will send a lot of soot and smoke into the atmosphere. And soon there will be a blockage to the sun rays from coming to the earth, and there will be nuclear winter. Once the nuclear winter will be there will be failure of the crops. This will lead to starvation. This will lead to wars further in the pursuit of food. And the poor people in the poorer countries will be affected the most, because we are already lacking the required calories for a healthy life. Around 2,800 calories we would need every day, but our calorie intake is much less than that, as we all know. Then the same study concluded, did another job. They found that if an all-out nuclear war occurs between Russia and USA, then 6.7 billion people would be dead in 2 years. That's a huge number, means 2/3 of or 3/4 of Earth's population dies. So practically the civilization ends. And then in such situation, when there is a talk that Iran should produce nuclear, when we came here, Tarun, my brother, was with me, and we were sitting in the lobby, and that Ajtak TV was there. It was showing that Iran has used the nuclear weapons. Iran the nuclear weapon has to. I said, there is no such news. False propaganda, 1-2 lines they used, and after that they did not repeat that. So I think this book from Hasan Abdullah is a warning signal, and this is a yeoman's job that he has done, writing this book, enlightening us. So the take-home message for me is that we as environmentalists should press upon that the damage to the environment, to the climate, that the military activities they cause, it must be highlighted in a large manner, in a big manner. As per the information today, the global military activity is a significant contributor to the climate change, and it is estimated to account for nearly 5 to 6% of the total greenhouse gas emissions. It may be more after this war, and I am afraid this is likely to increase, because the insecurity among the nations is increasing. There is a possibility that in the multipolar world there will be regional security groups. There is a possibility. And then they will also increase their arms strength. The arms industry will be happy to help them to make profits. And the US imperialism will not sit like this. They will also keep on doing this. Another, the conferences on the climate change, 7 conferences have occurred. They have hardly discussed the points of militarism and the impact on the environment. The major international agreements such as the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement have played a crucial role in shaping global climate action. However, they largely ignore military emissions and the environmental impact of the wars. And Gaurav has very nicely explained in details how much damage every bomb and every missile causes. But this is not the issue or a point of discussion in the COPs which are held every year in the Conference of Parties. During the Cold War period, in the two major points, Nevada and the Semipalatinsk. Nevada in the US and Semipalatinsk in Kazakhstan. They were the places where maximum number of detonations of the nuclear weapons were held. And there, if someone has the this opportunity to go, then one can see how much damage. Even in this Pokhran area, initially you were not allowed to go. Of course, I don't know how much is the restriction now to go there. So the nuclear arms race may increase. So there has to be a public outcry, very powerful public outcry should be there against the nuclear weapons, and the peace activists have now big challenge with them. We should ask for that there should be transparency and accountability in the defense-related environmental events. It's not so easy because they say it's a security concern, it's a national concern. Deshdrohi if you ask for that, but we have to demand that. Recognition of war and conflict as drivers of climate crisis and all climate chaos, better word to be used, the climate chaos, we must demand for. The peace activists must demand for the reduction in the military expenditure and reallocation of resources towards the climate action and public welfare. And strengthening of international efforts towards disarmament, particularly the nuclear disarmament. But this requires a political courage, a conviction among the people, and in the type of atmosphere that we are living in our country, where talking of 20,000 children being killed in Gaza by the Israeli armies, or the small children being killed in the school on the very first day, the primary children in Iran. You may be called as Deshdrohi again because you are talking of such issues. And our Prime Minister does not utter a word about the dead in Gaza. He rather states that we stand with Israel now and beyond. That means he justifies whatever Israel has done now also, because war had not occurred at that time. So I think this is time we have to go to the people, raise the issue, and I feel it is the time that we should have global outlook and local responsibility. We must organize wherever we are, whatever we can do, because it is so important. Our life is in danger. All the flora and fauna is in danger. So we have to work hard. It's a big challenge. As a medical professional, we were holding a demonstration recently, only last week, and I will end with that. One person came to me on the scooter. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "We are holding a demonstration against the attack on Iran." He said, "Israel is doing good." I support that. I said, "You support the 20,000 children being killed by the Israel?" Then he didn't say any word. Then I said, "As a doctor, I must heal them, and you with your ideas, you want to kill them. You do your job, I do my job." Thank you.
मैंने वो शुरुआत में बोल दिया।
अरे मैं खाने आई सॉरी अच्छा
Respected dignitaries of the dais, Dr. Arun Mitra, Mr. Gauhar Raza, Mr. Jacob Koji, Mr. Subhash Gadade, and Mr. Hasan Abdullah, and our dear guests, a very warm good evening to all of you. It is my privilege and honor to present the vote of thanks. We are deeply grateful to Dr. Arun Mitra for taking time out of his busy schedule and traveling all the way from Ludhiana to grace the occasion and share his valuable insights with us. We sincerely thank Mr. Gauhar Raza for graciously accepting our invitation at short notice. Despite his many commitments, his presence and thoughtful insights have significantly enriched the discussion and added depth and relevance to our deliberations. A special note of gratitude to Mr. Subhash Gatale, not only for sharing his considered views, but also for conducting today's proceedings with such clarity, warmth, and ease. Allow me to briefly introduce him. He has introduced all. I would like to say a few words about him also. Allow me to briefly introduce him. After studying engineering, he chose to devote his life to contributing towards social change through collective societal interventions and writings. He regularly contributes to various periodicals and has authored several books in both English and Hindi. We are indeed fortunate to have him with us. We feel truly privileged that such distinguished speakers joined us this evening, broadening our horizon and deepening our understanding of the challenges of climate chaos. A special word of appreciation for author Mr. Hasan Abdullah, whose book has brought us together this evening and whose introductory remarks set the tone for a rich, thoughtful, and engaging discussion. Mr. Hasan Abdullah is a prolific writer, widely known for his acclaimed book Evolution of Ghalib. A committed social activist, he has been actively involved in numerous grassroots initiatives in the fields of education and health. On a personal note, I feel proud to share a long association of over 45 years with him as a co-traveler in many grassroots initiatives aimed at social change and strengthening progressive forces. We are grateful to him for his important contribution and for providing us this opportunity for meaningful dialogue. A big thank you to all our esteemed invitees for taking time and making the effort to be here and for contributing to such a meaningful and engaging evening. I hope you found the discussion as enriching as we did and perhaps also enjoyed the food for thought. Our sincere thanks to Naamak Publications and Mr. Muhammad Faizan for their efforts in bringing this important and timely book to publication and for making it accessible to a wider audience. We are also grateful to the India International Center for kindly making this venue available to us and for their excellent support. With thanks to everyone present here today and also to those who could not join us due to prior commitments. Before we conclude, may I request Professor V.K. Tripathi to kindly present our tokens of appreciation to the distinguished speakers. Professor Tripathi, please.